It is 8 p.m. here in East Africa, and this is Africa Live. Thank you for joining us. I am Penina Karibi, also lined up for tonight. Uganda has recorded a 56% increase in coffee exports, but farmers are calling for more investment to boost quality. And teams have arrived in Zambia ahead of the COSAFA Championships set to kick off Saturday. Let's begin in Egypt, where 3 supporters of deposed President Mohamed Morsi were killed by security forces on Friday. This as a crowd of hundreds tried to march towards the military barracks in Cairo, where Morsi is allegedly being detained. Thousands of Morsi supporters demonstrated in cities across the country on what was called a Friday of Rage by the Muslim Brotherhood. They were protesting the military coup that ousted Morsi. Egypt's Liberal coalition issued an urgent call for its supporters to take to the streets in response to Islamist protests. This raises the risk of clashes between the rebel groups. The African Union has suspended Egypt from all activities following the overthrow of the government. The decision was made at a meeting by the Union's Peace and Security Council in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa on Friday. CCTV's Grum Chala reports.
Shortly after Mohamed Morsi was ousted by the Egyptian army, initiated by the latest popular uprising, the African Union said it has suspended Egypt from membership based on the fact that the military took power unconstitutionally.
As mandated by the relevant AU instruments, Council decides to suspend the participation of Egypt in AU activities until the restoration of constitutional order.
The heated debate among some of the members of the AU Peace and Security Council was whether Africa should respect what is called the Lome Declaration of 2000, which outlines the framework for African response to unconstitutional change of governments, or not. The council acknowledged the need of Egyptians to change their president, but the army's action was simply unacceptable. So the next interesting thing is to know when the day of free elections in Egypt is going to be.
We'll have to work with the Egyptian people and interim authorities to see how quickly they can have the elections. So we can't say, but we hope that they will happen as quick as it's possible.
Against the African Union's decision, Egypt's ambassador to the African Union, Mohamed Idris, still believes the Egyptian population made their choice and should be respected by all parties.
The voice and the presence and the call of tens of millions of Egyptians in the streets and squares of all over Egypt cannot be omitted. This voice has to be heard, understood, and respected. At the end, the people are the source of all legitimacy and are the ultimate goal of all our endeavors.
The chairperson of the African Union, Dr. Lamini Zuma, will send elite personalities of the continent to Egypt soon, and AU has already pledged to help the country on its way forward. The concern of many now is whether unseating a president via uprisings and military interference is going to be a growing trend in Africa or not, which dwarfs democratic elections. And to cut short of such a trend, the AU suspended Egypt from its membership, perhaps its way of sending a message to the whole of the continent that the unorthodox way of grabbing power won't be veracity in Africa. Grumjala, CCTV at the African Union headquarters, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
All right, let's discuss the developments in Egypt further. We're joined by CCTV's Yasser Hakim is live in Cairo. So we have reports that the pro-Morsi protests have turned violent. What is the situation now, and do we know who is responsible for the shooting?
The military says that it is not the one that has shot at the demonstrators. They said that the demonstrators were trying to break in the military, the headquarters of the Republican or Presidential Guard, and this is a military installation. And they pushed them back with tear gas and blank bullets, but not real bullets, or not live bullets. So, and they're saying there are no death in this situation, so they're denying these reports. That's the military side of the story. Otherwise, there has been an escalation in Egypt in the last few hours, a lot of twists and turns, and this time it's going towards the Muslim Brotherhood, whose chief, Mohammed Badi, who we knew, or we were told, that was arrested. He showed up in a rally at Nasr City at the Rabaa Adawiya Mosque, and he gave a speech to his followers telling them that not to move and not to go home and to have an extended sit-in and extended demonstrations everywhere until Mohammed Morsi is freed. And he said that the Muslim Brotherhood will not stop. Obviously, he told his followers to stay as peaceful as possible, but the Muslim Brotherhood supporters in other cities and even in Cairo, in areas in Cairo, have been attacking police installations and military checkpoints. Around 6 or 7 checkpoints already have been attacked by militants, and there has been 2 deaths from the military and around 20 injured. There is a kind of a power struggle, if you might say, developing right now in Egypt between the generals of the military and the Muslim Brotherhood as we speak. Now, the millions who came and demonstrated to oust President Morsi last week have right now been calm. As you can see behind me, those are the anti-Morsi supporters. They're just celebrating. They're still in the celebratory mood. There's music going on, fireworks going on, as if it's 2 different countries. On the other side of Cairo, you can see skirmishes, clashes, and fights, and calls for violence. And on this side, it's the other way around. The liberal parties, the opposition parties that are anti-Morsi, are now calling on more Egyptians to turn back, to go back to the streets like they did the last few days, to show support for the military and in its quest for a new roadmap. We all know that the president, the interim president, will announce the roadmap tomorrow on Saturday, and what will he be doing in the next few months for a new president, a new parliamentary elections, and a new constitution. Whether this will go ahead on time, whether there will be more skirmishes, more insecurity in Egypt, it remains to be seen right now, because every hour the developments are new and they are unexpected, if you might say.
All right, yes, so you did mention there that supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood have been asked to stay put until Mohammed Morsi is freed. So let's talk a little bit about that. There's been conflicting reports about Morsi's whereabouts. Is it now clear that he is under arrest?
We don't know where Mohammed Morsi is not right now. The last time we were told about his whereabouts was the day before yesterday. We were told that he was at the headquarters of the Presidential Guard, and he was moved to the military intelligence. But since then, there's no news about where he is, and I think it is intentional by the military not to give out any news about his whereabouts, so that his followers would not go to where he is and try to free him by force. Where is he? But we all know that we were told by the military that he will be put under investigation and will be tried for inciting violence by calling on his supporters to defend what he called legitimacy, his legitimacy and his presidency by their lives, by their blood, which means, which is translated by the military and by the opposition as inciting violence, and he will be put on trial on this regard. Like I said, the other side, his followers are saying they will not move or they will not leave the streets unless he is freed. Who will win and who will manage to achieve his own targets, we will see.
All right, yes, so thanks very much for joining us. CCTV's Yasser Hakim there, live in Cairo. Now, on Thursday, Egypt inaugurated its new interim president, Adli Mansour. Mansour is expected to lead the country through its uncertain transitional period after the army ousted President Morsi. But who is Adli Mansour? CCTV's Adel Mahroui with the details.
In the absence of a president, the Egyptian constitution states that the parliament's president temporarily rules the country. If there is no parliament, then the chief of the Supreme Constitutional Court would fill the position.
I swear by God the Almighty to sincerely maintain the republican system, to respect the constitution and law, to fully care about the interests of the people, and to maintain the independence and territorial integrity of the homeland.
With this oath, Adli Mansour became the second interim president in Egypt's history and the seventh overall. Mansour was elected chief of the SCC on May 19th and officially took office on July 1st. The interim president is a title added to his position.
He's a very calm person and a good listener. He doesn't get irritated easily. Actually, he never gets irritated or angry. He listens to our problems as workers and takes steps to help us out.
Mr. Mansour graduated from Cairo University's law school in 1967. He completed his postgraduate studies 2 years later. He began his career as a judge in the State's Council in the early 80s. And in 1983, he served as a legal advisor for the Ministry of Commerce. He ended his duty in 1992. It was the same year that he became deputy chief for the SCC.
There are a lot of things in this country that he didn't like. If he was walking on the streets and find someone throwing something from his car to the street, he would get upset, while nobody cares. He would always assist us. If there's an employee who can't get a meeting with him, I would tell him, and he would step in, whether it's a work or personal problem.
Mr. Mansour will lead the country until Egypt amends its constitution, elect a parliament and a president. President Mansour is expected to lead the country for a maximum of 1 year. He will leave as soon as the reconstruction of the legal authorities has been completed. He will hand in the country to the next elected president. Many believe that being a judge would make the development of these processes fair. Adel Mahroui, CCTV, Cairo.
All right, let's take a break here on Africa Live coming up. All set, President Robert Mugabe's party on course for elections. And critical but stable, South Africa's presidency contradicts reports that Mandela is in a vegetative state.
We follow the latest trends in global politics, economics, culture and sport, and how Africa fits into the global picture. You decide what's important.
We need to trade justice. Africa's future will be determined by Africa.
For women's equal opportunity, for a better life.
We have to change something, and it's not the outsiders.
Talk Africa, a new voice for the world.
Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe launched what he called a Fight of Our Life campaign on Friday to extend his 3-decade grip on power in polls slated for July 31st. Speaking to tens of thousands of supporters in the capital, Harare, the 89-year-old said his ZANU-PF party wanted to stay in office to push through its plans to increase black ownership of the economy. Mugabe also urged ZANU-PF to avoid any violence, saying it was set to win cleanly. This comes a day after the Constitutional Court rejected appeals, including from the opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai, to delay the vote and allow more time for reform of the security forces and state media. Tsvangirai's Movement for Democratic Change accuses ZANU-PF of software rigging to tamper with the voters' roll and alleges that some members of the army have been deployed in the countryside to intimidate potential opponents, accusations ZANU-PF denies. The South African presidency says former President Nelson Mandela remains in a critical but stable condition, contradicting earlier reports that he lay in a vegetative state. Doctors treating Nelson Mandela had said he was in a permanent vegetative state and advised his family to turn off his life support machine, as according to court documents obtained by AFP Thursday. The certificate of urgency document was filed by a lawyer representing Mandela family members who had successfully sought a court order to return the disputed children's remains to the revered South African leader's childhood home after a grandson had them moved to his own village. Lawyers for Mandela's relatives, family members themselves and government officials were not immediately available for comment. All right, let's get more details on this story. CCTV's Guy Henderson is live in Pretoria. Guy, these documents that have emerged would have been submitted under oath. So why is the presidency denying the details contained within them?
Well, it's not at all clear that this document, which has been widely circulated now, widely reported on across South Africa and across the world, it's not clear that this initial document was the one that was then submitted to the court under oath. I've taken a look at it. It's dated the 26th of June, Wednesday last week. It's apparently written by advocate David Smith, who is the advocate that has been representing the Mandela family on one side of this dispute. And on this document is the names of 15 of the Mandela family, 15 members of the Mandela family that have, of course, been locked in this dispute with Mandela about this gravesite. Now, within this document, there is those two phrases that have been causing quite a lot of shock here. Firstly, the quote that Nelson Mandela is in a permanently vegetative state, and secondly, that doctors had a week ago now recommended that his life support machine be turned off. However, looking at this document, it hasn't actually been signed. There is another document that has been seen by various other media and that has been reported on that doesn't include those details. So it has been suggested that what may have happened is that this document was drawn up as a way of trying to persuade the judge to move forward with this case rapidly, given that it was a very public and very high-profile spat, but that document wasn't necessarily submitted under oath in the end.
So, Guy, let's talk about the family feud that pits Mandela's grandson on one hand and other family members on the other. What are South Africans making of this very public family feud?
Well, it is very public, and it's causing a lot of international headlines. And I think South Africans that I've spoken to, certainly along this street and in other parts down in Johannesburg, have said that they are upset by it and that it is causing a distraction from the health of Nelson Mandela himself, who has now been in a critical but stable condition, according to the South African presidency, for nearly a month. There have, of course, also been high-profile criticisms from high-profile South Africans, including the Deputy President, who has asked, or has pleaded, really, for this dispute to be carried out and solved quickly and in a dignified manner. And then Archbishop Desmond Tutu, perhaps slightly more outspoken and more direct, has said that this argument is akin to spitting in Madiba's face. Saying that, I think that South Africans do still make a distinction. Yes, on the one hand, there is the Mandela family that has for some time had divisions within it, that has caused controversy very much in the public arena. But on the other hand, I think South Africans still do make a distinction where Nelson Mandela himself is still seen as basically untouchable, a man who made a massive journey through many, many years of sacrifice. His reputation, I think, to millions of South Africans and to millions of people around the world, despite what's happening with the Mandela family, remains, I think, intact.
All right, Guy, let's leave it there for now. Thanks very much for joining us. Guy Henderson live in Pretoria. Now, former South African President Nelson Mandela remains in a critical but stable state in a Pretoria hospital, just like Guy Henderson said. He is credited with leading the revolutionary struggle against apartheid rule in South Africa, a role that saw his name celebrated all over the world. Thanks to Mandela, Uganda maintains historical links with South Africa.
Almost impossible to ignore The Mandela National Stadium is an imposing structure in the outskirts of Kampala, named after South Africa's former president. It's the biggest sports arena in Uganda. Mandela National Stadium is an iconic landmark that immortalizes the Nelson Mandela legacy here. At its commissioning, Ugandans danced to South African lyrics from reggae icon Lucky Dube, who was widely known to have sung freedom songs. But stashed away in the jungles of central Uganda is the Oliver Tambo Military Academy, a base that clearly creates a bond between the ANC, Nelson Mandela's former party, and Uganda. This burial site is a symbol of the military alliance forged between the ANC and the Uganda government. The rebel wing of the African National Congress soldiers reportedly trained here from 1989 in preparation for an offensive against the white minority rule in South Africa.
Very well see here, this is the graveyard of the fallen comrades of ANC, those who participated in the struggle, and they were trained from here, but they never made it.
14 of the soldiers died here due to harsh conditions at the camp. Over 3,000 ANC soldiers were moved to this site after a UN resolution was passed demanding ANC rebel to be disbanded from all of South Africa's neighboring states, a condition which needed to be met to grant Namibia independence. And so Uganda, which is thousands of miles away, became the safest military training ground for the rebel group.
The de Klerk government in South Africa had promised to come and bomb some of those areas where they are. So Kaweta was such a place that was hidden away, and accessibility was not easy.
Today, some of the equipment lies in ruins. This Soviet-made truck was the central communication unit for the trainees and their headquarters. The Uganda Army says there are plans to curate them. The academy is already positioning itself as a center of excellence for ideological Pan-African military training. A training facility named after ANC leader Oliver Tambo has its walls decorated with famous African leaders, including Nelson Mandela. The curriculum here is modeled around these personalities.
When he came into power, he made a rainbow country. He shocked the world. How? He never revenged. So those are some of the legacies that we show our students, that these are some of the best qualities that can also be used to unite Africa.
Authorities here believe a military without ideological direction would be damaging to African stability. Hilary Yesiga, CCTV, Oliver Tambo Military Academy, Central Uganda.
Let's take another break here on AfricaLive coming up. Trouble in Sudan. South Sudan blames Sudan for fresh air raids. And Nigeria cautioned over impending floods.
Mie nimeimba wakati enzi za Rupia. Sasa hakuna taarabu. Taarabu zamani. Unadhani ajui taarabu, nyimbo za taarabu? Anazijua zote, lakini hapendi.
Ukiondoa ngoma za asili, basi utakuta mambo ya sanaa za uchongaji.
Na mwenyewe
now focus on the Sudan, and South Sudan accuses South Sudan's army of launching 2 separate attacks on areas near the disputed border in a sign of renewed friction between the neighbor states. South Sudan's army spokesman Philip Aguer said 2 Sudanese MiG warplanes bombed military positions in the disputed Jau area on Wednesday, wounding 4 soldiers and 2 civilians. Aguer added that Sudanese infantry troops had earlier that day pushed into southern territory in Upper Nile State, apparently to seize fertile land. Khartoum denies the accusations. Aguero said South Sudan was not planning a counterattack. Relations between the Sudans hit a new low last month when Sudan threatened to halt South Sudanese oil exports passing through the north unless Juba cut ties with rebels allegedly operating across the shared border, links South Sudan denies. Both sides had agreed in March to set up a border buffer zone and resume cross-border oil flows in a bid to end hostilities after coming close to war in April 2012. However, tensions remain between the two neighbors. Nigeria's meteorological agency has released its seasonal rainfall prediction, which anticipates that there may be flooding in the northwest and southwestern parts of Nigeria. Meanwhile, Nigeria's emergency management agency says it is on standby for any natural disaster. CCTV's Chimanonko now reports from Abuja.
The year 2012 will remain unforgettable for the wrong reason. Millions of Nigerians suffered as a result of the ravages of Nigeria's unpredictable weather. The commercial capital, Lagos, in Nigeria's southwest, which lies below water level, was literally submerged.
If you people can even snap my house safe, my house, you will see where my mattress is. My mattress is still stuck now. So the last rain now, me and my children, we climb on top of my bed. Upon say we climb the bed, the water still reach the bed.
Acting proactively, Nigeria has issued a flood alert. But will it be taken seriously?
Our analysis shows that in about 70% of the country, our predictions regarding when the rainy season would start was correct.
This year, Nigeria's authorities intend to take action based on the predictions. This is the Mission Control Center of Nigeria's Emergency Management Agency. Here, there are no holidays. They work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to ensure that they stay on top of Nigeria's emergency and disaster management.
NEMA is prepared for the 2013 floods.
Foreign partners give last-minute disaster tips.
So I think the most important thing is when there are no floods, for people to be forearmed with information, and that information is for free. So they find out, for example, safe spaces to go, where there's high land that they can go to during the floods.
Already, flooding has been reported in parts of Nigeria's deep south. With good information and action, the rains may be contained. Chima Wankwo, CCTV,